13. Katherine Colabella, aka Kitty Bella. A former adult actress from South Florida became entangled in not one, but two hit-and-run crashes over a 2.5-year period beginning in March 2021. Katherine Colabella's first arrest came after she allegedly struck a cyclist along the MacArthur Causeway in Miami Beach and fled the scene in her vehicle. The victim survived after being rushed to a nearby hospital and undergoing emergency surgery for a brain bleed. Colabella, also known by her stage name Kitty Bella, was charged in connection with the hit and run after her Mercedes-Benz was identified in traffic footage as the vehicle suspected in the crash. Video evidence showed the car traveling from near the accident scene to a high-end condominium complex, where Colabella handed the vehicle over to a valet and proceeded to visit a resident of the building. After noticing the damage to her car and that she seemed drunk, employees called 911. Responding officers had the car towed and held off on arresting Colabella until the next morning, when she showed up at the police department looking for the vehicle. She reportedly confessed to the hit and run and claimed that she'd fled because she panicked. Colabella also allegedly admitted to drinking and driving. Authorities charged her with felony counts of reckless driving and leaving the scene of a crash with serious bodily injury. Despite the seriousness of the charges, Colabella managed to avoid prison time. She was initially sentenced to house arrest and managed to get the punishment reduced to regular probation. In September 2023, Colabella was accused of committing another hit and run while still on probation for the 2021 incident. According to police, she rear-ended a vehicle at a red light in Plantation and drove away without stopping to deal with the accident. This time, police managed to catch up with her and pull her over. The arresting officer noticed the distinct odor of alcohol on Colabella's breath and that her eyes were bloodshot. He soon took her into custody on suspicion of DUI, driving with a suspended license, and violating her probation. Colabella is being held without bond at the Miami-Dade County Jail while awaiting the outcome of her case. 2. Camila Navaro, aka Mia Echeverria. Before she made international news headlines for allegedly smuggling cocaine, 27-year-old Camila Navaro, better known as Mia Echeverria, made a name for herself as one of Uruguay's top adult film stars. She's also the famous ex-wife of 48-year-old soccer star Richard Morales, who she has 2 children with. In July of 2023, Echeverria was among a group of 3 women and 2 men who were detained following the discovery of a 14-pound cocaine stash in their luggage at Carrasco International Airport in Montevideo. They were attempting to travel to Spain when the drugs were found during a routine baggage search. Echeverria initially denied having any knowledge of the copious coke supply, and in a rare display of support between exes, Morales paid all her legal fees. The former footballer continued to pay for his ex-wife's representation, even after it became clear that she wasn't so innocent after all. A search of Echeverria's phone revealed that she'd sent text messages to her co-conspirators containing tips about how to avoid getting caught with drugs at the airport. In one message, she reminded her accomplices that having the right attitude would help them get through security without raising suspicion. She also advised her fellow gang members to act touristy by taking photos and acting intrigued about their surroundings. As the evidence stacked up against the blonde bombshell, she realized it was in her best interest to strike a plea deal and confess to her role in the drug plot. By coming clean, Echeverria cut her possible 18-year prison sentence down to just 2 years and 7 months, which will enable her to serve her time and put the incident behind her without causing any lasting damage to her life. 11. Kacey Jordan. During American actor Charlie Sheen's infamous mental breakdown in 2011, he allegedly partied for 36 hours straight with former adult actress Kacey Jordan. The Two and a Half Men star allegedly paid the much younger 22-year-old bombshell $30,000 for her companionship before he was rushed to the hospital in the throes of a mental crisis just days later. Jordan told E! News that Sheen used so much cocaine and booze during their binge that he seemed like he was on a mission to self-destruct. She described the troubled celebrity as kind and sweet, but criticized him for not lasting very long in the bedroom. In light of Jordan's claims, Sheen's representatives released a statement accusing opportunistic women of trying to take advantage of his celebrity status while he sought help for his problems. A peek into Jordan's past revealed that she herself was far from innocent. According to records obtained by the Daily Mail, she was arrested in West Hollywood in 2009 for allegedly driving under the influence. The news outlet published the adult star's tear-soaked mugshot, along with details about how she spent 20 days in jail after pleading no contest to the charge. When Sheen went public about his HIV-positive status 4 years after his viral meltdown in 2015, Jordan told the Daily Mail that she wasn't surprised given the disgraced actor's history of risky behavior. She commended Sheen for being open about his diagnosis, but said that the news presented her with new fears about her own reputation, given their intimate past. Jordan said she'd been tested multiple times and was negative for the virus, but her past association with Sheen still caused people to wonder, and it had a negative impact on her professional image. She admonished him for his frequent encounters with porn stars, despite being an adult actress herself, and said that she hoped Sheen continued to make changes for the better. 10. Amanda Sunnyday Logue and Jason Addison Andrews. Amanda Logue, better known as Sunnyday, and Jason Andrews were brought together in 2010 by their careers in the adult film industry. At first glance, it was the only thing they had in common. Logue was a married prostitute from Georgia who dabbled in multiple adult professions, while Andrews was a British DJ who starred mostly in gay movies. But the pair shared an insatiable attraction to one another, along with a sinister desire to rob and kill an unsuspecting tattoo artist named Dennis Scooter Abrahamson. 41-year-old Abrahamson had hired Logue to work as a prostitute at a vice-fueled party at his home in Port Richey, Florida. In the days leading up to the event, Logue and Andrews exchanged dozens of text messages, hashing out the specific details of their murderous plot. The pair attended the party and acted normal until after all the other guests went home. Once there were no witnesses present, Andrews repeatedly stabbed Abrahamson and bludgeoned his skull with a sledgehammer. The killer couple fled the state with $6,000 of stolen cash and the victim's credit cards. Nearly 2 months after Abrahamson's murder, Andrews was picked up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where he'd landed work as a nightclub manager. Logue was also found and arrested. She tried blaming the entire murder on Andrews, claiming he forced her to watch and threatened to kill her if she told anyone. But the evidence showed that she was an equal participant in the twisted plot. Both parties were convicted of first-degree murder. Logue received a 40-year sentence and will be released in 2047 at the age of 65, while Andrews is serving the rest of his natural life behind bars with no possibility of parole. 9. John Champ Snavely. John Champ Snavely was discovered by an adult acting recruiter in 2009 while working as a stripper in San Antonio. He moved to Florida, where he continued dancing in clubs and took a job dancing in adult movies geared toward a female audience. It paid $500 per day, which would be good money even now, but it was especially good money back in 2010. In 2013, Snavely was arrested on a drug charge in Miami. As a standard part of the booking process, police took a sample of his DNA, which turned up as a match to the profile of a previously unidentified suspect in a murder case from 3 years earlier. According to authorities, Snavely met the victim, 60-year-old marketing executive Sam Del Brocco, at a strip club in Fort Lauderdale. The pair went back to Del Brocco's Pompano Beach townhouse together, where Del Brocco was reportedly stabbed to death. Prosecutors accused Snavely of being the killer after DNA and fingerprint evidence allegedly linked him to the crime scene and the victim's car. Snavely maintained his innocence and refused to cop to a murder charge. In a motion to dismiss the case, his lawyer pointed out that DNA found on the murder weapon and a marijuana joint did not belong to Snavely. Furthermore, the movements of Del Brocco's cell phone indicated that he left his townhouse for a second time that night and went to a location in Fort Lauderdale. During his time, it's possible that Del Brocco picked up the man that the mystery DNA belongs to, and Snavely's lawyer argued that there's no reason the unnamed individual couldn't be the real killer. Luckily for Snavely, the judge agreed, ultimately ruling that there simply wasn't enough evidence to proceed with the case. The charges against the defendant were dismissed, and he was free to carry on his life as usual. 8. Katrina Danforth, aka Lynn Pleasant. In December 2018, an actress named Katrina Danforth was accused of trying to hire someone to kill the father of one of her children. The 31-year-old from Post Falls, Idaho, who performed under the name Lynn Pleasant, allegedly sought the services of an undercover cop posing as a hitman. According to court documents, Danforth told the fake assassin that she didn't care if anyone other than her child was hurt in the process of killing her ex. She just wanted the job done, and she agreed to pay $5,000 to make her baby daddy disappear for good. Danforth mailed $2,500 to the undercover as a down payment, at which point she was taken into custody. Federal authorities arrested Danforth at the Spokane International Airport in Washington on 5 counts of using interstate commerce in the commission of murder for hire. She pleaded not guilty to the charges, but eventually admitted to 2 counts of soliciting murder for hire. Danforth faced up to 10 years in prison and a fine of up to $250,000. In hopes of mitigating the punishment, her defense attorneys told the court about her troubled childhood and the struggle she faced before becoming an adult actress. They pushed for a sentence of a little over 7 years. But the judge was apparently unmoved by the defense's pleas and instead sentenced Danforth to the maximum 10-year term, followed by 3 years of probation. She was also ordered to pay a $1,000 fine. According to federal prison records, Danforth is serving her time in Tallahassee, Florida, and will be released in 2026. In April 2021, after serving roughly 3 years of her sentence, Danforth requested compassionate release, arguing that her obesity and asthma make her more prone to catching a deadly case of COVID-19. The court rejected the request on several grounds, including Danforth's failure to demonstrate how releasing her after serving 1/3 of her time appropriately reflected the seriousness of her crime. In its ruling, the court noted previous concerns over Danforth's apparent lack of remorse at her sentencing hearing. Furthermore, the decision stated that the former adult actress's health conditions do not reflect the severity that a situation requires for compassionate release. The court questioned whether Danforth is medically obese and concluded that her asthma is managed just fine with medication. So, while it may have been worth a shot to try winning back her freedom, it was a failed mission at the end of the day, leaving Danforth with no choice but to continue serving her time. 7. Aaron Michael Dobbins. 31-year-old Alfred Chad McMurray was found murdered execution style in his Oakland Park, Florida home in August 2010. Responding officers arrived at the residence to find him lying face down with his hands bound behind his back and a gunshot wound to the back of his head. The killer had stolen McMurray's pickup truck, which was found abandoned and saturated in bleach outside an apartment complex the next day. McMurray's wallet, Wii video game system, laptop, and iPhone were also missing from his home. It was clear to investigators that the killers had gone to great lengths to conceal any trace of their identity. DNA evidence was recovered from the scene, but it was initially unclear whether it belonged to a suspect or to someone who was inside the home for innocent reasons. And despite their best efforts, detectives were unable to identify a suspect throughout the course of conducting interviews with persons of interest. McMurray had a history of drug addiction, but was committed to his recovery. There was no evidence to indicate that he'd relapsed and met with foul play due to a drug deal gone wrong, or any other type of drug-related violence. He was also known for being an extremely kind person, leaving his loved ones at a loss to identify anyone who might have wanted him dead. More than 12 years went by without any arrests. As time dragged on, McMurray's family began to wonder if justice would ever be served. Answers finally came in August 2022, when investigators linked DNA found under McMurray's fingernails to a 52-year-old former adult actor named Aaron Michael Dobbins. According to a spokesperson from the Broward County Sheriff's Office, Dobbins lived in Oakland Park between 2010 and 2015. Detectives initially found no links between the suspect and the victim, but a simple Google search of Dobbins' name was all it took to discover his former profession as an adult entertainer. They eventually discovered that Dobbins' roommate and ex-boyfriend, who was also an adult model, had introduced him to McMurray. The roommate, John Navaro, who also went by the nickname Mr. Muscle Stud, met McMurray through the internet, where Navaro advertised paid massages for male customers. Navaro and McMurray met on several occasions, and Dobbins joined them for at least one of the meetings. According to law enforcement, Dobbins grew insanely jealous of Navaro's interactions with McMurray. Dobbins and Navaro had dated for several years, but their relationship fell apart due to differences stemming from each man's level of openness about being gay. After the DNA discovery was made, detectives questioned Dobbins, who allegedly denied being intimate with McMurray and claimed that his DNA was under the victim's fingernails because McMurray had attacked him. He also denied ever going to McMurray's house, stating that he couldn't remember ever being at the residence. Dobbins is being held without bond at the Broward County Jail while he awaits trial on a first-degree murder charge. 6. Jennifer Marchant, aka Scarlet Rouge. After a day of heavy drinking in 2013, 24-year-old former adult actress Jennifer Marchant returned to her apartment in North Tonawanda, New York, with her boyfriend Ralph Stone Jr. The couple got into an argument which eventually escalated into violence and ended with Marchant fatally stabbing Stone. Marchant, who once went by the stage name Scarlet Rouge, claims she killed Stone in self-defense as he chased her around the apartment. According to court documents, Stone repeatedly hung up the phone when Marchant tried calling 911 and the operator tried calling back, and he warned the dispatcher that there would be trouble if they sent officers to Marchant's home. The dispatcher sent police to the residence, where officers observed a struggle between Stone and Marchant. When Stone noticed that the cops were there, he lunged at one of them, but was quickly subdued. He passed away from a single stab wound to the chest, and Marchant was charged with inflicting the fatal injury. According to a toxicology report, Stone's blood alcohol content at the time of his death was 0.285, roughly 3.5 times the legal limit for driving. There was no doubt that he was highly intoxicated, and even some members of law enforcement supported Marchant's innocence. Despite her efforts to clear her name and the circumstances surrounding the case, Marchant was convicted of first-degree manslaughter and sentenced to 12 years in prison. She continued to challenge her case, and in 2017, an appellate court overturned her conviction after concluding that the state had failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that she did not act in self-defense. Marchant was released from custody and free to go back to living her normal life, much to the disappointment of Stone's loved ones, who felt that she'd gotten away with murder. The exonerated woman's family, on the other hand, hailed the outcome as a victory, especially since Marchant wrote her own appeal without a lawyer's help. Niagara County District Attorney Caroline A. Wojcicki vowed to look into whether there was still any way to still hold Marchant accountable under the law, but she ultimately announced that the case was unappealable and that the state did not plan to pursue the matter any further. 5. Stephen Clancy Hill, aka Steve Driver. Also known as Steve Driver, 34-year-old Stephen Clancy Hill struggled to make it in the adult film industry. He wasn't very famous, and after experiencing repeated performance issues, he was relegated to taking low-level jobs that did little more than cover his rent and provide him with a little bit of walking around money. Over time, Hill's erratic behavior and poor hygiene became too problematic even for no-name film projects. But when his employer fired him and banned him from the company's property in Los Angeles in 2010, he refused to leave peacefully. The studio's manager, Christopher Raquel, tried convincing Hill to leave without causing any further problems, but Hill grabbed a sharpened samurai sword that was being used as a movie prop and viciously attacked Raquel. 3 of Hill's former co-workers rushed to Raquel's aid, including Herbert Wong and Yuri Drell, who were struck by the blade as Hill continued swinging. The wounded victims were rushed to the hospital, where Herbert Wong died from multiple stab wounds, and Hill fled the scene. Authorities issued a warrant, charging Hill with 1 count of murder and 5 counts of attempted murder. 4 days later, a SWAT team surrounded the suspect, who was armed with a sword and threatening to use it. Team members shot Hill twice with non-lethal guns, but he refused to surrender as he inched closer to a cliff. In a last-ditch effort to escape law enforcement, Hill jumped off the cliff. He died from injuries sustained during the fall, and would have most likely survived his gunshot wounds if he'd surrendered. In hindsight, it was clear that Hill's problems started long before he became an adult performer. During the late 90s, he was put on house arrest after assaulting a teacher's assistant at his college for giving him a bad grade on a paper. While on house arrest, Hill developed a fascination with the adult film industry. He began buying copious amounts of pornography, which he paid for by taking out lines of credit with no apparent plans to pay the bills. His credit tanked, and his criminal record followed him around, making it difficult for him to find and keep employment. After being fired from several jobs due to his sketchy past, Hill tried becoming an adult entertainer, and as you already know, that didn't end well. In 2019, a film about his tragic end was released. But like everything else relating to Hill's life, it too was a flop. 4. Timothy Boham, aka Marcus Allen. In November 2006, a wealthy businessman named J.P. Kelso was found dead inside his Denver, Colorado home by his housekeeper. The 43-year-old had been shot in the head. Kelso's blood alcohol level was a staggering 0.352 at the time of his death, more than 4 times the legal limit for being considered impaired. Police initially didn't suspect foul play, but the evidence soon suggested otherwise. 3 days after Kelso's death, authorities identified Kelso's former employee and friend, 25-year-old ex-porn actor and escort Timothy Boham, as the prime suspect in the case. Boham appeared in over a dozen adult films in 2004 and 2005, and he was also featured on the cover of Playgirl magazine. He quit the business and moved to Denver about a year before Kelso's murder. The accused killer worked for Kelso's debt collection company for about 10 days before he stopped showing up for work, by which point he was already in the throes of a downward spiral. It would later be discovered that Kelso and Boham stayed in touch even after the job didn't work out, and that Kelso paid Boham for intimacy on at least one occasion. By the time a warrant was issued for Boham's arrest for Kelso's murder, he'd fled to Mexico, but he quickly turned himself in at the Arizona border crossing. Boham admitted that he believed Kelso had a large amount of money stashed in a safe at his house. He planned to rob his former boss, but the situation took an unplanned turn when Kelso refused to open the safe, leading to a struggle between the two men. Boham would later claim that he accidentally shot Kelso during the fight. He also claimed that Kelso had asked him to cuddle right before he committed the robbery, indicating that the victim was totally unaware of what was about to happen or that his friend had ill intentions. After killing the victim, Boham cut the safe open. He expected to walk away with anywhere between $100,000 and $400,000, and was shocked to discover that there was no cash in the safe at all. Before fleeing the country, Boham returned to Kelso's home several times to destroy evidence and to try covering his tracks. He scrubbed fingerprints from the scene and dumped clothing, bedding, and a shell casing into a nearby creek. Boham confessed to his family about the murder and said that he had planned to use the proceeds from the robbery gone wrong to flee to South America with his girlfriend. Now that Plan A was out of the picture, he decided to run off to Mexico instead. Several members of Boham's family testified against him during his trial, including his mum and sister, and his ex-girlfriend also took the stand. The defense argued that Kelso's wounds were self-inflicted and that the scene was staged as a murder so his life insurance company would pay the beneficiaries of his policy. The jury found Boham guilty of first-degree murder, which carries an automatic life sentence without parole in Colorado. 3. Ignacio Jordan Gonzalez, aka Nacho Vidal. Better known by his stage name Nacho Vidal, 49-year-old Ignacio Jordan Gonzalez rose to fame as a performer in live adult shows in Barcelona. He went on to star in over 1,500 adult films and also became a director and producer of the genre. Vidal's legal problems began in 2012 when he and his sister were among 80 suspects who were accused of laundering money for the Chinese mob by issuing fake invoices from Vidal's adult movie company. These siblings also allegedly participated in a tax evasion scheme with the organized crime group. While the outcome of the case is unclear owing to Spain's highly protective privacy laws, it was only another handful of years before Vidal landed himself at the center of another legal scandal. This time, the controversy stemmed from the death of fashion photographer Jose Luis Abad, who died from inhaling toxic toad venom during a ceremony at Vidal's home in 2019. According to news sources, Vidal was presiding over the traditional Amazonian ritual in Anguera, Spain, as a shaman when Abad suffered fatal complications from the activity. Vidal was initially arrested alongside a relative and an employee on suspicion of manslaughter, based on the accusation that the trio failed to summon medical help for the victim in a timely manner. In 2021, the charge against Vidal was upgraded to reckless homicide due to his role as the director of the ceremony. He was accused of failing to properly monitor the amount of toxin Abad ingested and of supplying the fatal dose. While the current status of the case is unclear, he could face up to 4 years in prison if convicted on the charge. 2. Lauren Wambles, aka Aubrey Gold. While most Americans cautiously celebrated the 4th of July holiday during the first year of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, an adult performer and 2 co-conspirators were busy killing an Alabama man over an alleged drug debt. 51-year-old Raul Ambris Guillen was last seen alive at his home in Dothan with 23-year-old Lauren Wambles, better known as Aubrey Gold, the young woman's boyfriend, 35-year-old William Shane Parker, and a third suspect, 43-year-old Jeremy Odell Peters. That same day, Guillen reportedly called his ex-wife and asked for money. He said he got mixed up with the wrong people and made it clear that he felt unsafe. Over a month later, an investigation into Guillen's disappearance led police to Peters' home in Graceville, Florida. Cadaver dogs found the missing man's decomposing body in a shallow grave nearby. Guillen had been shot in the back of the head. William Parker confessed to pulling the trigger and was charged with second-degree murder. Wambles and Peters were also charged in connection with the case. During his trial, Parker took the stand and recanted his confession, claiming he took the ramp for the murder because he knew he could handle doing prison time and that Wambles couldn't. He said he pieced the story together based on bits and pieces of information he gleaned from his alleged accomplices. But the jury didn't buy Parker's revised version of events. He was found guilty as charged and sentenced to life without parole. Peters was convicted of accessory after the fact and conspiracy to commit witness tampering and received a 20-year prison sentence. Wambles agreed to testify against Parker and Peters and pleaded no contest to 1 count of accessory after the fact to second-degree murder. She received a 10-year prison sentence in exchange for her cooperation. The former adult actress starred in over 30 movies between 2015 and 2018. After that, Wambles started getting in serious trouble with the law, racking up 6 arrests over a 2-year period prior to the murder case. She was awaiting trial on a drug charge when she was accused of participating in Guillen's murder. And while she's paying a serious price for her actions, she'll still be lucky enough to get out of prison at a young enough age to have a long and fulfilling future, if she chooses to go down the correct path. We have another great video lined up right after number 1. If you need more of a daily wordless dosage, then be sure to stay tuned if you haven't seen that one yet. 1. Jordan Joplin. In a shocking case out of Ketchikan, Alaska, a former exotic dancer and adult film star named Jordan Joplin was accused of robbing and killing a 58-year-old surgeon named Dr. Eric Garcia. According to prosecutors, the 32-year-old Washington resident had befriended Garcia in 2014. The two developed a close friendship and eventually became romantic partners. In March 2017, Joplin traveled to Alaska to spend a day with Garcia before returning back to the US mainland. A few days later, Joplin called the police and asked them to perform a welfare check on Garcia, who'd failed to show up for a planned get-together in Washington state. Officers stomped at Garcia's house, but left without entering, believing nobody was home. 9 days later, Joplin traveled to Ketchikan and called police to Garcia's residence again. He had a set of keys, which he used to let the cops inside Garcia's house, and was driving his lover's truck. Police found Garcia dead inside the house. An autopsy concluded that he died from a fatal cocktail of strong opioid painkillers and benzodiazepines, including morphine, methadone, Valium, and Ativan. An estimated 2 tons of valuables were missing from the home, including electronics, a coin collection, around $50,000 worth of watches and jewelry, and a $320,000 liquor collection. The killer had managed to disable Garcia's home security system, which was one of the first clues that the suspect knew the victim and had access to the residence. Further investigation revealed that during his visit to see Garcia right before the surgeon's death, Joplin had ordered 3 shipping containers to be delivered to the home. He was accused of loading the containers with the stolen valuables and shipping them to his home in Washington. During a search of Joplin's house, investigators found Garcia's wallet and cell phone. An analysis of bank records showed that Joplin had transferred more than $30,000 from Garcia's accounts into his own over a 2-week period following his visit to Alaska. Detectives also found a disturbing cell phone video that appeared to show Garcia in an unresponsive state on the suspected day of his murder. Additional evidence proved that Joplin drove the victim's truck to the airport later that night and flew back to the lower 48. In 2023, more than 5 years after Garcia's death, a jury found Joplin guilty of first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and first-degree theft. His sentencing was originally scheduled for October 2023, but has been delayed. He's facing anywhere from 30 to 101 years behind bars.
Number 11. Ali Spice. Known to her followers as Ali Spice, 21-year-old Ali Doolin had a TikTok fan base of nearly 1 million when she lost her life in a car accident in 2022. She was among 3 people who were killed when a driver who was traveling in the wrong direction crashed into their vehicle near DeLand, Florida. The driver who caused the wreck fled the scene on foot and managed to evade law enforcement. Authorities still hadn't made any arrests or released the driver's name 7 weeks later. According to the Florida Highway Patrol, the crash was still under investigation and they were waiting on lab results. Frustrated with the pace of the investigation, Doolin's family put a notice out on Facebook accusing a man named Tom Petrie of being the driver responsible for the crash. But he told a reporter from the Daytona Beach News-Journal that law enforcement confirmed he wasn't the driver and denied hiding from the police. Around 1,000 people attended Doolin's funeral, according to her father, who told the news outlet that roughly 20% of the attendees came from out of state. The former Hooters waitress was known among her followers for spreading positivity and encouragement to people struggling with addiction and abuse, and for taking the time to respond to her direct messages, making her a rarity among influencers. Number 10. Alexis Sharkey. When 26-year-old Alexis Sharkey stopped responding to her phone the day after Thanksgiving in 2020, her friends and family immediately became worried that something bad might have happened to her. As an influencer who sold organic health products and shared most of her life with her followers, she was never away from her phone for very long. Word of the woman's disappearance spread fast, with some speculating that her husband, 48-year-old Tom Sharkey, was somehow involved, though he adamantly denied having anything to do with it. The next morning, the young woman was found naked and lifeless in some bushes along a service road in Houston. While authorities awaited autopsy results, Tom told reporters that his wife wasn't as happy in real life as she acted on social media, but he said that they had a good marriage and that he was cooperating with detectives. 7 weeks after Alexis's body was discovered, a medical examiner ruled that she'd been strangled to death. By then, Tom had relocated to Georgia. A few months later, he agreed to meet with investigators to provide a DNA sample. But when the time came, he was nowhere to be found, and then he moved to Florida. In addition to being suspicious of Tom's evasiveness, detectives discovered a history of domestic violence between him and Alexis, and her friends claimed that she'd mentioned the possibility of a divorce shortly before her death. During a press conference, Houston Police Sergeant Michael Burrow said that there was evidence that the couple had separated and that Tom wanted to reconcile, but Alexis was already done with the relationship. Burrow also explained that there was never any bombshell evidence against Tom, but that the man's behavior over time and his evolving stories eventually led law enforcement to suspect he was somehow involved in Alexis's death. After concluding that Tom was the only person who had the means, motive, and opportunity to kill Alexis, authorities obtained a warrant for his arrest. They paid a visit to his daughter's house in Fort Myers, Florida, where he was staying, but he ran upstairs and took his own life before they could take him into custody. Alexis's death is now considered a closed case, although limited details have been released to the public. Number 9. Cara Santorelli. 18-year-old Cara Santorelli gained a sizable TikTok following during her senior year of high school. She was just months away from graduating in early 2023 when she posted a video touting her impeccable driving record. The footage showed the young woman in her vehicle and was captioned, "When they try to call me a bad driver, but I've never hit a person or an actual car." Just a few days later, her SUV was struck by an oncoming Chevy sedan that was driving the wrong way along Highway 29 in Escambia County, Florida. Santorelli was reportedly killed instantly in the head-on collision, which happened at around 1 a.m. on St. Patrick's Day. The sedan burst into flames, killing the other driver involved in the crash as well. In the days following the accident, Santorelli's post about never being in a car wreck went viral, garnering about 15 million views. The tragedy serves as a disappointing reminder of how even the most safety-conscious motorists can tragically lose their lives due to another person's reckless driving. Number 8. Josh Neuman. American skateboarder and influencer Josh Neuman experienced a life-changing moment when he first saw the Northern Lights during a sponsored trip to Iceland in 2022. The 22-year-old, who ran one of YouTube's most popular skateboarding channels, was flying in a small Cessna with 3 others to create commercial content for the Belgian fashion brand Suspicious Antwerp when suddenly the aircraft vanished. They didn't send out a distress signal before the plane disappeared from radar over Lake Thingvallavatn, Iceland's second largest lake. More than 1,000 members of Iceland's search and rescue organization participated in the ensuing search, and the submerged plane was found with help from autonomous submarine and sonar technology. At the time of the discovery, authorities announced that poor weather had prevented them from sending divers into the lake to retrieve the bodies. In a statement on Neuman's Instagram page, his family wrote that he died doing what he loved and that he'd seen the Northern Lights shortly before the plane crashed. During the experience, he'd made the comment, "This is the happiest day of my life." The cause of the plane crash was, unfortunately, never disclosed to the public. Number 7. Abby Choi. When 28-year-old Hong Kong-based model, socialite, and internet celebrity Abby Choi failed to pick her daughter up at school in early 2023, her family reported her missing. Her last known whereabouts were in a car driven by her hired driver, who also happened to be her former brother-in-law. By then, Choi had been featured in several major magazines, including Elle, Harper's Bazaar, and Vogue, and she had over 100,000 Instagram followers. Just a week earlier, she'd been living it up at Paris Fashion Week. It was certainly possible that perhaps she was met with foul play at the hands of an obsessed fan, but investigators found answers much closer to home when they looked into her ex-husband, Alex Kwong, and the rest of her former in-laws. Choi had stayed on peaceful terms with her ex after their divorce several years prior, but she'd recently become entangled with the family in a dispute over a luxury property she'd purchased for her in-laws that she was planning to sell. She promised to find the Kwongs a new home, but her father-in-law, Kwong Kao, objected to the sale of the home. The investigation into her disappearance led police to an apartment in a coastal village that Kwong Kao, Alex Kwong, and his brother Anthony Kwong Kong Kit had recently rented. Inside, police found what the Independent described as a splatter-proof body disposal workshop. Coverings had been laid down on the floor and over the walls, and the apartment contained an electric saw, a meat grinder, face shields, raincoats, and other materials that authorities say the trio of men used to dismember Choi's body. Pieces of the woman were unfortunately found in the fridge, a pot of soup, and various other places throughout the apartment, and visible damage to the back of her skull indicated that she'd been bludgeoned to death. 7 people have been arrested in connection with Choi's murder so far, including Alex Kwong, his brother and father. Her former mother-in-law, Jenny Lee Siew-hyung, also faces a charge for preventing the course of justice, and 3 others were indicted with aiding and abetting a murder suspect. Number 6. Alexis Ware. Alexis Ware's popularity on social media was growing when she began acting differently during a visit to her mother's house in South Carolina in 2022. By then, the 29-year-old single mother of 2 had already commented on how she received messages from creepy men on Instagram. But she seemed especially withdrawn during the visit, and someone kept calling her phone over and over. When her mother, Alberta Simpkins, asked Alexis who was calling, she referred to the person as the devil, but didn't go any further into detail about their identity. She also said that she was worried she was being followed, and that she didn't think she'd live to see her 30th birthday, which was just 2 months away. But oddly enough, she refused to say why she felt that way. Alexis and her mom spoke over video chat one last time the day after she returned home from her visit. A few hours later, she went to a 7-Eleven store in Anderson, about 40 miles, 64 kilometers from her home in Greenville, to exchange her kids with their father, TJ Patterson. Surveillance footage showed what appeared to be a peaceful conversation between Alexis and TJ before the two of them drove off in separate directions. TJ later told investigators that Alexis was planning to follow him to his mother's house, but that instead, she turned and went the opposite way. Her car was seen outside an apartment complex in Anderson later that night and was also spotted by a highway camera in Augusta, Georgia. The vehicle was found abandoned and covered in mud a few days later on a remote dirt road in McCormick County, South Carolina. Inside the vehicle, police found her cell phone, purse, and a bag of clothes. A hair bonnet she'd been wearing the night she vanished was also located nearby. To this day, Alexa's disappearance remains shrouded in mystery. Her mother continues to hold out hope that her daughter might still be alive and doesn't think TJ Patterson is involved. She's convinced that whoever was incessantly calling Alexis that weekend had something to do with whatever happened to her, and the missing woman's family has also expressed concerns that her growing online popularity may have played a role in her disappearance. They're hoping that someone comes forward with information on her whereabouts so the mystery can finally be put to rest. Number 5. Raquel da Silva Moura Medeiros. When 41-year-old Brazilian dentist and social media influencer Raquel da Silva Moura Medeiros failed to return home one evening in 2022, her concerned family filed a missing persons report and put the word out on social media. She left the town of Jiparana in Rondônia state at around 10 p.m. on October 16th. Her vehicle was captured on surveillance footage 20 minutes later as it arrived in Jaru, but her trail went cold from there. A major search effort ensued, but initially nothing helpful to the investigation was uncovered. But after 2 days, a helicopter spotted her overturned Chevy Onyx in a patch of vegetation. The vehicle had veered off the road and plummeted down a cliff, and Raquel's remains were found inside. While announcing the discovery of her body, authorities made it clear that they suspected no foul play and that they believe Raquel's death was the result of a tragic accident. They said that it took a while to find her because it was difficult to spot the overturned vehicle in the overgrown ravine. Since 2017, Raquel had worked at a healthcare center in Araquemes, where she was well liked by her co-workers. She posted photos of her dental work on social media and also shared her passions for traveling, fitness, and spending time with friends and family. Number 4. Danny Lemoi. Rhode Island-based influencer Danny Lemoi gained a following on Telegram where he championed the use of a veterinary drug called ivermectin, which was used to treat COVID-19 during the early days of the pandemic. He began taking the controversial drug daily in 2012 to treat Lyme disease and praised it for its healing effects, which he claimed enabled him to stop all other treatments. Ivermectin is an anti-parasitic drug commonly used in horses and other animals. Many members of the group Lemoi became famous among considered it to be a miracle drug for almost every imaginable disease or ailment, believing that these conditions are caused by parasites. It's especially popular among anti-vaxxers, and some members of Lemoi's group even talked about giving veterinary-grade doses of the drug to their children. But modern science strongly indicates that there's no therapeutic value to ivermectin, especially since many of the conditions people have started taking it for aren't caused by parasites. There's also evidence to suggest that the drug is dangerous for humans. Countless major health organizations have warned against taking veterinary-grade ivermectin, including the Food and Drug Administration, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the European Medicines Agency, and the World Health Organization, just to name a few. Some of the group members who took Lemoi's advice complained of serious side effects like seizures, coma, lung issues, heart problems, vomiting, migraines, and severe pain in various parts of the body. And when Lemoi suddenly died in early 2023, one might think that his followers took it as a sign of ivermectin's dangers. Some did, but many continued to throw caution to the wind and remained in a state of denial. In a statement, Lemoi's family revealed that his heart had grown to double its normal size and that it was overworked. They mentioned that the family has a history of heart disease, but didn't speculate on whether Lemoi's use of ivermectin or his decision to quit other treatments may have played a role in his death. His most devout fans became angry at people who even suggested that the drug might be to blame, and they accused those individuals of spreading misinformation, something that ironically health officials have been accusing them of doing for years now. At the very least, Lemoi's death should have given group administrators enough pause to think twice about what they were promoting. But they've continued to promote the use of ivermectin and remain convinced that there was no way it had anything to do with his death. Number 3. Mercedes Morr. Better known to her Instagram followers as Mercedes Morr, 33-year-old Janae Gagnier had some serious social media cred. She started off as a dancer and transitioned into being a model, and eventually became popular enough to make a living from her sponsors. It wasn't entirely unusual for her to be seen partying with celebrities, and people recognized her pretty much everywhere she went throughout the Houston area. An influencer with 3 million followers never goes long without checking their phone, which is why Janae's family found it odd when she went radio silent in August of 2021. Her father, Mark Gagnier, eventually became concerned enough to go to her apartment and check on her, but when he arrived, the door was locked, so he kicked it in. He found Janae dead at the bottom of her staircase and initially thought she'd had a terrible accident of some kind. That assumption changed when Mark entered his daughter's bedroom and found a man with a knife stuck in his neck. The man, who was later identified as 34-year-old Kevin Alexander Acorto, was still alive, but barely, and eventually he died from his injury. Bizarre messages scrawled across Janae's wall with pink lipstick offered some of the only clues about the circumstances leading up to her murder. One of the ramblings stated, "Janae led me to think she cared about me, but wore another man's ring," while another said, "I was used for money." An autopsy concluded that Janae died from strangulation and a traumatic concussion, and investigators found no evidence that her connection with Acorto extended beyond social media. Mark later told local station KTRK that he'd warned his daughter repeatedly about the dangers of social media and his fear that a crazy person might become obsessed with her and stalk or harm her. Unfortunately for him, his worst fears came true. Number 2. Sophia Chung and Erica Leanne Tavares. Hong Kong-based influencer Sophia Chung's Instagram profile headline read, "Life should be fun, not dumb." She was best known for her scenic and sometimes risque photos taken at popular hiking destinations. During a visit to Hong Kong's Ha Pak Lai Park in 2021, a 32-year-old nature enthusiast tried to take a selfie at the edge of a waterfall, but sadly she lost her footing and fell into a 16-foot deep, 5 meters pool of water along the Tsing Dai stream. Emergency responders rushed Chung to the emergency room, where she was later declared dead. The tragedy came just days after another influencer fell from the top of a waterfall halfway across the globe in Mexico. 23-year-old Erica Leanne Tavares was visiting the popular tourist spot in the state of Chiapas during her trip to Mexico from Portugal when she tried to take a selfie and fell through a crevice. She dropped 24 feet, 7.3 meters to the water below, and was swept away by a strong current. Tavares was found dead in an overgrown area following a 12-hour search and recovery operation. Sadly, these incidents only represented the latest among a growing number of selfie-related deaths that have occurred along the advent of social media and the desire for popularity. In addition to the desire of internet fame causing people to put themselves in harm's way, responders often have to put themselves in danger to rescue those who survive and to retrieve those who don't. One study even concluded that selfies kill 20 times as many people as sharks, suggesting that perhaps it's not always worth it to capture the perfect photo. Being an influencer can come with a lot of perks, including travel and high-paying opportunities, but there's also a downside to it, like the sacrifice of privacy, safety concerns, and the pressure to keep followers interested in your content. Number 1. Tiba Al-Ali. In early 2023, a 22-year-old Iraqi YouTube star named Tiba Al-Ali was killed by her father during an ongoing dispute with her family. The young woman had relocated to Turkey and was visiting relatives in southern Iraq's Diwania province in an attempt to resolve the dispute when the horrifying tragedy occurred. Voice recordings that are said to contain conversations between Al-Ali and her father suggest that he was upset about her living in Turkey alone, but little else is known about the disagreement that the family was experiencing. One source claims that their differences date as far back as 2015, and that Al-Ali had been in Turkey since 2017, which was when she refused to return to Iraq at the end of a family vacation. When she finally traveled there to try settling the dispute for good, she was attacked and strangled in her bed while she was sleeping. Her father reportedly confessed to the murder, which has been classified by the media as an honor killing. Al-Ali's death sparked protests across Iraq, where there are no laws against domestic violence, a problem that only seems to be worsening in the country. Past attempts to pass legislation have failed, and for now, the law continues to be disturbingly lenient toward perpetrators of so-called honor killings.
Thanks for watching. If your best friend quit their respectable and decent-paying day job in order to make adult content full-time for a lot more money, would you support the decision or discourage them from treating it as a long-term plan? Let us know in the comments below, and remember to subscribe. See you soon. Bye.